On June 27th, the Federal Reserve Board announced a final timeline and implementation details for the adoption of a new Fed Wire Fund Service messaging format, also known as ISO20022. This new date adds 3 more years to the perceived timeline of events. Needless to say, it has caused a bit of an uproar with ISO investors. In this video, however, I want to show you how this is not a bad thing at all, and how this delay will allow for the innovation needed to see the results that we are looking for as investors of ISO coins. As always, I'm Wade Teamer, and you're watching DHN. Let's start by establishing what the ISO standards are and what they mean for the future economy. ISO was founded in 1946 in London. 65 delegates from 25 countries met to discuss the future of international standardization. International standardization in this sense means universal languages for every sector of the market. For example, let's say you want to send money overseas to a friend. In this case, money is going from the United States to Europe, from your bank to his. The reason that both banks can complete the transaction despite the geological distance is that both USD and the Euro can read the same ISO messaging. ISO creates similar interoperability in all these industries you see listed here. Getting back to the announcement, the Federal Reserve came out and said that the plan was still to make the switch in one day, and that day would be March 10th, 2025. This is important because the Fed Wire Fund service is built to be interoperable with new and existing payment systems. The key word here is new. We have already established the payment systems connected with ISO: XRP, XLM, XDC, IOTA, Algorand, and Hedera Hashgraph. Quant stands alone in this because they created their own standard. More on that later. But there are also outliers like Cardano, who joined the conversation more recently. Initially, I was skeptical about Cardano's placement. That was until I understood the standards a bit more. Saeed Patel, product lead for London-based company EastNet, stated 4 major challenges for banks in migrating to ISO 20022. The first is understanding the complexity of the new system. Banks are still running on very old ISO standards. This means their systems are not yet built to handle the new information. Second is a need for a migration and execution plan. Once banks come to understand what the new standards are, they then have to find ways to incorporate them into their business. Third deals with risk assessment strategies, security, and verifications. Lastly, the benefits of rich standards only to be fully unlocked on wider bank adoption. This means that for ISO 20022 to happen, all the world's banks must be on the same page. Because banks don't understand the system, don't have a plan, and are not in agreement, the migration to ISO is being delayed. Knowing that makes the relationships we do see with banks and crypto start to make a bit more sense. What we are seeing is blockchain payment companies building solutions on their chains to solve this problem for banks. Volante builds payment rail solutions for banks around the world. In January of 2021, Citibank chose Volante as their exclusive migration partner. Volante Technologies is also a Ripple partner, and together they have built an accelerator for banks to use Ripple for their ISO migration needs. This is important because all XRP holders want the adoption of RippleNet and ODL, which uses XRP token for settlement. On June 22nd of this year, Impel, built on XDC, activated its ISO migration services. XDC uses R3 and Corda technologies. Both of those companies are part of a much larger organization called Hyperledger. The Hyperledger Foundation has all of the banking relationships XDC will ever need. Also, XDC was built on Quorum, which is JP Morgan's blockchain technology. Earlier this year, we discovered that the Federal Reserve was holding a showcase. This is where companies can display and promote their ISO technologies to the Federal Reserve. Volante Technologies is participating in the showcase, along with the only cryptocurrency listed, Cypheria. These 3 instances show us the biggest reason for the delay is that the industry, the financial industry, is not ready. The good news is that the crypto industry is ready. That is why we see the relationships forming the way that we do. Here's another thing to consider. Remember, ISO standards are not just payments based. We briefly covered the scope of ISO standards earlier and learned that multiple industries are influenced by these standards, including blockchain. This of course brings up the Quant network. Gilbert Verdian is the creator of the Quant network and the world's first ever ISO standard for blockchain technology, TC307. More than 53 nations around the world are currently practicing these standards put in place back in 2018. On the subject of first, in 2020, Crypto.com, now known as Kronos, became the first ever crypto to achieve ISO IEC 27701 certification. This is a milestone for privacy risk management as the world's first standard outlining privacy implementation guidelines for data protection. That last one directly addresses one of the 4 major problems stopping banks from transitioning effectively. So are you still holding CRO? The supply chain has been the talk of the town recently. ISO 9001 is the code set for the supply chain. IOTA is often associated with ISO for payments, and now with this information, you can put them down for the supply chain as well. At the same time, this also calls to mind another popular supply chain token, VeChain. If word were to ever come out that VeChain got an ISO certification, the VET token could easily double, if not triple, its current value. Now, what you see before you is a global roadmap that I found while researching this video. In it, we can get a better picture as to when the nations of the world are looking to make the switch. What stands out the most is the fact that countries like India, Japan, and China have already migrated. If you take a look at the level of innovation for these nations, things start to make a little more sense. Hedera Hashgraph is highly respected in India, which is why shortly before India established crypto regulation, the highest university in the land, IT Madras, joined forces with Hedera in 2021. There is also Council Member Nomura, who is based in Japan, already under new ISO messaging. Everything we covered in this video can be summarized in one point. The digital transformation we are going through is creating a global marketplace that needs a universal language. That universal language is ISO, and the speakers of the new language will be cryptocurrencies. A moment ago, we spoke about ISO standards on the supply chain. Well, in this video, we have a top 5 list that I think you might find interesting. While you're watching that, I want you to have a great day, have a prosperous day, and most importantly, if the money is digital, so is the hustle. I'll see you in the next video.